My Lords, I rise to this group, someone interrupted, just to remind everyone essentially we're talking about dental health. And I'll speak first on Amendment 224 in the name of Noble Lord Lord Hunt and others to which I attach my name. And that's calling for a statement from the Secretary of State on access to dental care at regular intervals. And I think it comes back to a point I've been making again and again through the bill about the question of responsibility and the Secretary of State taking responsibility and being forced before the Houses before Parliament to take that responsibility. Now, I think the Noble Lord Lord Hunt introduced that very clearly, and I agree pretty well with everything he said. However, I'm now going to start to disagree with him. And I note at this point that I'm addressing a number of the amendments on fluoridation, which were signed by my noble friend Baroness Jones of Molescombe. And those who were paying attention before will note that her name was on the enunciator for being in the other committee room when we started this group, so I'm speaking on her behalf. And I think there's an interesting progression here, because actually had you asked me to do that a few years ago, I would have been quite uncomfortable with that. Because a few years ago, had you asked me what's the Green Party policy you disagree with, the one I would have questioned was our opposition to mass fluoridation. But actually, I've been on a journey since then, both a political journey and also a scientific journey. And I've come to realise that fluoridation is one of those health measures, one of those medical practices that came to be adopted because it seemed like a good idea, well before we did proper trials, proper work, proper consideration. And there is now, as the Noble Lord Lord Ray set out, increasing scientific questioning of that happening. Now, I want to actually not go over the same ground as the Noble Lord Lord Ray did, but come back to thinking about where we actually are and applying systems thinking to this. And the fact is that, according to the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the number of people now willing to drink water from the taps in the UK has dropped from 90% in 1978 to 73% in 1998. To put it another way, 1 in 4 people now mistrust the water coming out of their taps and won't drink it. And if you think about what impact that has, and if you happen to go into a supermarket, you will see a great many people lugging large bottles of water, very often plastic bottles of water, often people who are really struggling to pay for that water, yet they're buying water because of their lack of trust in the water supply that actually is far healthier than what's in those bottles. And I would urge them all to drink the tap water, and that is the healthy option. But we have a real problem of trust, something we've seen in other contexts, and this, a potential mass fluoridation imposed from the centre above, is something that could potentially have a real impact on actually reducing tap water. And the Noble Lord Ray said, well, people can't afford it, so it's the poorest who'll be forced to drink the water. But actually, what the evidence shows is that actually many people who can't afford it now, and it's people from more disadvantaged backgrounds, from BAME backgrounds, people who suffer from many disadvantages now, who are reluctant to drink that water. And we know the issues of trust that we've seen also around the COVID-19 vaccine. These are issues that could see real risks to dental health. And I also think we want to apply some real systems thinking. Now, I think the Noble Lord Lord Ray referred to Scotland and the fact that Scotland's brought in some really good programs for dental health, targeted programs that actually help children learn to brush their teeth, that address issues of diet and, of course, the consumption of sugary foods that have so many other health issues as well. And I put to the committee, we know what happens in politics. We have a problem with tooth decay, and the government says, right, we're doing fluoridation. Where are we then going to see the money, the focus, the attention on those targeted programs that would actually reach the children that need it most? Now, a number of noble lords before the break referred to studies that show that areas of the UK that are fluoridated have lower levels of tooth decay, particularly among children and disadvantaged children, than areas that are not. But what I would say is that those areas still have utterly unacceptably high levels of tooth decay, which has massive impacts. We tend to think of that teeth in isolation, but we're talking about the health of these children in total. And if we don't see that focus on targeted interventions, then we're going to see this mass medication problem solved, box ticked, and we're not going to see the kind of steps forward that we need. So, my lords, I think this is about not mass medication without consent. It's about trust. It's about decision-making being democratic. So I think this is one more area where the government should think again in this bill.